Nearly 100 years after Mary Astle's serious proposal to the ladies was published, Mary Wollstonecraft likewise proclaimed the moral and political equality of women in her Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Therein, Wollstonecraft discusses friendship, and this ties in directly to discussions of one of her larger aims, namely, to argue that marriage between men and women should be a relationship of equality, not one of dependence or subordination, and that marriage should be founded on virtuous friendships, not mere fondness or fleeting lust. Thus, Wollstonecraft seems to flip the traditional script on its head. But how so? Find out this week on From What We've Gathered with Dani Nelson and Kylie Shahar.
In the land of teeter totters, I prefer a slide. Turbulent or gentle waters, let's go for a ride.
Hi, Dani.
Hi, Kylie.
Okay, so today's a little bit different. Instead of asking you to consider a scenario, I'm going to do a bit of a pop quiz here.
Ooh la la, let's have it.
I'm going to ask you to consider the following movies, okay? When Harry Met Sally, 13 Going on 30, Friends with Benefits, and Always Be My Maybe. Now, my question is, what do all of these movies have in common?
Women whose hairstyle at some point I've had
Was very popular.
They all have friends to lover tropes.
Yeah.
Like they all include, I mean, especially When Mary Met Sally is one of the most famous movies of all time that kind of deals with this. They meet each other.
Yeah.
You know, they like annoy each other. They're not even friends.
Right.
They like somehow annoy each other. But then over time, they somehow overcome this annoyance to become friends.
Uh-huh.
And then once they're, friends, at some point, they're like too comfy together. And then they sleep together.
Right. Oh, dun, dun, dun.
And then they're like, uh-oh, I'm in love. Let's get married.
Right.
I mean, that's not exactly the 13 going on 30
Right.
script, but same friends.
Yeah.
They're like best friends.
And then after a long run around and like some crazy thing about like transforming from a 13-year-old to a 30-year-old and some whatever
Mysterious Freaky Friday
situation.
Yep.
The end of the plot sort of is these two friends who were as children,
as young adults or whatever, or in meeting.
Right. They grow up and then they realize, oh, like really, we can forge this wonderful romantic bond because we've had this great friendship over so many years. And so, yeah, I think, it's
absolutely.
like,
and it's like what everyone wants now, right? Like, I think pop culture wise and into the modern world, I would think like most people aspire towards this at this point. Like the aspiration is to kind of like find someone that you have the ultimate friendship with.
Yeah.
As part of the value of marriage.
It's kind of like, like this ideal to strive for, right? Marry your best friend type of thing. Or this idea that, your romantic relationship will be really strong and strengthened if it's built on a solid foundation, and that solid foundation can be friendship. I think a lot of these rom-coms take this kind of shape and, they have different details and different subplots and whatever, but one of the kind of main takeaways is this kind of friends to lovers, friends to marriage, whatever it is. And so the reason I wanted to highlight these rom-com films, not to be cheesy.
I love cheese. I just want to, please, more.
Please, more cheese. But it's also to just highlight how that kind of plot, friends to lovers, friends to marriage, sits in pretty stark contrast with some of the ideas of previous philosophers that we've looked at, where that's really not an option on the table.
No, not at all.
Right?
Montaigne is definitely not allowing that. You can't even be friends with your wife.
Exactly. Or
that's
with
not even
women.
A friend of yours or women at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for boys.
It's just like, by definition, it's just like ruled out for a lot of these other philosophers.
Yep.
So it sits in stark contrast to this. And also I wanted to highlight it because it seems on the face of it like such a modern or contemporary idea, right? It just kind of seems like very, well, ordinary to us, but something aspirational and ideal to strive for. But it just, I don't know, seems like
it does seem like a newer kind of like, oh, it used to be arranged or just who you're around or whatever. But now this is go and find your best friend.
Right. And that might, turn into a great romantic relationship. And so, so it's got this flavor of a very modern contemporary idea, but it actually this very idea can be traced back to the 18th century. And in particular, we can sort of trace it back to not only the works, but the life of this fascinating philosopher, Mary Wollstonecraft, who in 1792 published her Vindication of the Rights of Woman. And one of her larger aims as we started out was to offer some reflections on marriage, because from a, you might think feminist standpoint in this period, marriage and the institution of marriage was highly criticized because, at least especially from Wollstonecraft's point of view, it left women in this state of dependence, depending on, well, first, of course, depending on your father, your family, and then really not living in a society that did not encourage or permit women to become educated or have this kind of authority over her own life. And so she goes from, her father's watch to then essentially her husband's watch eventually. And so the institution of marriage from this feminist point of view was criticized as being a relationship of dependence, or that you get into it purely for economic or practical reasons, or it's just what you do and you hope perhaps that you end up with a good husband.
Please carry me off the market, sir. Exactly. Or even better, let my father pay you.
Yes, exactly.
To carry me off the market.
Money, goats, whatever it is.
Right. And Wollstonecraft, who I love, is considered, even though we talked a little bit about Mary Estelle and her deliverance into that she may not even qualify herself as a feminist.
Right.
Wollstonecraft is definitely considered one of the first actual feminists, as in she is trying to rethink society from the female point of view. And even one of her most famous things is she's like, we don't want to rule men.
Yeah.
We just want to be seen as their equals.
Right.
This whole idea. So that's very much the sentiment of,
for sure,
we have the capability and intellect to be your equal if there was education. This is a thing where it comes back to she was very much like, why is the education of women essentially only around home and hearth?
Yeah.
The only education women were expected to get is how to run a household and how to do household duties or amusements for their husband.
Right.
Painting, music, poetry, whatever,
right.
But for the betterment of their household.
Right. As opposed to their own personal development or, moral or otherwise, right?
And surely not for a profession.
Right.
That's the thing. Never.
For sure. Right.
What was available to women as far as work goes.
Right. And that's not to say that there weren't plenty of women, sort of entering spaces and sort of trying to resist these structures, right? It's not to say that women just weren't at all, running the household in really important kinds of ways, right? So if you think about, just as you were saying, like women only received just enough education, you might say, like basic arithmetic, so that they could keep the
their
books
house
of
ledgers,
the house ledgers, or basic kind of trades, so that they could sew clothes, or maybe make basic kinds of tools that they would need for around the house, right? So it's just to say, like, women were playing an essential and unremunerated role in their families' households. And so the kind of recognition and equality, of course, that Wollstonecraft and many others were arguing for was like in the eyes of society, we're not seen as equals, or we're not regarded with the respect that people just by default, think that they owe to men. Women are not by default respected in these ways. And so you find her, in the Vindication, like talking in ways where she says like, women are seen as like a female species, but not like a human species.
For sure.
Like, we're not different, right?
And
like,
this is coming during the Enlightenment period, where how is it that you can come up with these concepts of I think, therefore I am, and like that a thinking being has personhood and therefore rights as a person, but somehow not apply that to women. Right. Somehow the same idea and all of these very logical male philosophers who are coming up with all these concepts that, lead to individualism and all of these things that lead to La Revolution, that change the face of society. And when all these things are happening, they can't make the leap to apply these ideas to women.
Absolutely.
So what she's coming about to say, and especially with, remind me the name, what her paper was called, The Vindication of Women?
Vindication of the Rights of Women.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And so she's out there being like, hey, we're not asking you to say women are better than men. Right. That's not what we're out here saying.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, we can make people. Men can't make new people, so
we can make people.
I mean, we do need them. We do need them for the process.
Out of something, but we
cook them up.
Yeah,
we're the ovens. Not me personally. Other people in society. You potentially. We don't know. She's out there saying like, "Hey, how can you be coming up with all of these ideas based on reasoning, inside logic? Everything is like we're agreeing to it." How can you not then take those same ideas and apply them to women and also what I'll call the uneducated? Meaning there's a class system that there's also a breakdown starting to happen where in the far past, it's like, monarchies or whatever have been bequeathed with intellect from God. Well, this is a time period where they're saying that's actually not true. Anyone who is provided an education has the potential of intellectual, I don't want to say superiority, but intellectual ability.
Yeah. Right.
For reason. So anyways, she's out here being like, hey, we got brains. Yeah. We're smart people. Right. And this comes into friendship.
Yeah.
So she is one of the first people who is showing up to these intellectual kind of soirees, salons. And these salons are essentially people coming together with other famous minds. And they might have a dinner party where there's some music from a famous musician or a famous pamphleteer, And this is where Mary Wollstonecraft is going and building a reputation. And she's interesting because, do you want to talk a little bit about her early life, where she came from? She was, she was kind of born into a not. Let's just say well-off family, a family that was well-off enough that she hung out with people who had libraries and even if her family didn't. So she was born into a little bit of money, but her dad squandered it and was not a good guy. And he was a drunk and all of these kinds of things. But because her peers, her friends that were in her neighborhood or whatever were well off in a merchant kind of way. They had enough a lifestyle of funds enough that they might be intellectuals or in households where one of her best friends, when she was a teenager, her dad was just a kind of gentleman scientist. He had a bunch of he was an inventor kind of, and he was, they just but those are the people she got to hang out with. Her bestie was a botanical painter. So she would do all of these like very
Amazing.
detailed drawings and scientific kind of development around like, here's the flower, here's the leaf, here's the stem, you know, like and all the things. And so those are the people she's hanging out with.
Yeah.
Even as she's kind of falling into this economic thing. And part of that, so she definitely develops this idea of friendship between men and women. But she also develops this kind of idea, which she talks about in the Vindication of the Rights of Women, about what do you do with women who are educated and then have no funds?
Yeah.
Because in society, there's like 4 professions for women.
Right.
They're essentially a domestic servant.
Yeah.
They're a laundress. Maybe they're a bar wench. You know, I said 4, but you know, like there's very few
Limited options.
limited options, and especially not for someone who's sort of a middle class person who needs income.
Yeah.
But may not be marriageable for these same reasons that we talked about. She's like too educated for people who are willing to marry someone without money, but then doesn't have money to marry into the class that she's in because it's expected for her to have a dowry or whatever, which her drunk dad spent.
Got rid of it.
Got rid of
on
it.
ale.
So anyways, that's kind of where she's coming from, this idea of like, now what's unfair is she's a hard worker.
Yeah.
She's very brilliant human being.
Yeah.
So now her choices are to go into domestic servitude where she's kind of like a lady's maid to like a rich lady, and then she's a governess.
Yeah.
But then she's just like, fine, if I have to be a pauper, I'd rather be a writer. If I have to find a profession, I'm going to be a writer. So that's how she starts making friends with dudes. Because guess who publishes things?
Guys. Yep. Absolutely.
And they liked her. I mean, she was very well spoken.
Yeah.
So she meets this guy, William Godwin, at a dinner party.
Where they're expecting to speak with whom?
Thomas Paine. So she goes to a dinner party to talk to Thomas Paine, the most famous pamphleteer of all time. He is, you know, this is kind of the birthplace of where rebellions are happening, democracy is springing up. People believe that they have rights as citizens, individual rights.
Yes.
And so so all of these things are happening. The French Revolution is boiling up. And Mary Wollstonecraft is like, I'm a smart, sassy lady. I'm going to dinner parties. And this salon was from her publisher. And she meets William Godwin. And some people say she was a bit of a Debbie Downer. So that I assume that like anytime someone tries to say something like positive about the movements of society, which kind of William Godwin falls into that, even though he was like an anarchist and stuff, like he's like, yeah, everything's going in this really cool direction of changing things. And she would be like, well, is it though?
About that.
Yeah.
So
and so they, even at this dinner, they famously became like, they bickered like the whole time. And both of them like left this dinner and like wrote letters like, what the hell about this person? But over time, this also became this sort of friendship where they were willing to be because they were both very well spoken.
Yeah.
They may be very persuasive and end up around a lot of people who are like, yeah, good point.
Right.
Yes, we're doing that. But the two of them were willing to be like,
yeah.
But is that?
Yeah.
Or devil's advocate.
Yep. Here are all the flaws in your argument. Or you didn't consider this.
Yeah.
Right? Like challenging.
Or can't we just be happy? Why does everything have to be an additional criticism?
Right.
Which is something we think about in liberalism today.
For sure.
Like for every success, there's someone to be like, but it didn't include the, you know, whatever population, you know, like there's not a moment to enjoy just coming to a conclusion.
Right.
There's always
a step toward other things.
Which it should be.
Yes.
But sometimes, you know, William Godwin's just like,
well, yeah.
Isn't it nice? She's like, no.
Actually.
Yeah, it's not. And so, you know, the development of this, she was living this. She wasn't just sitting and like
theorizing.
a house in her little, parlor.
Yeah.
She was out there being like, I'm in the mix with the dudes.
Yeah.
Including, she actually goes to France to be there for the revolution. She like arrived there like just before Louis the 16th was beheaded. Like, and she's making friends with all these people who are actually doing the revolution, including she wrote a book about it. Like all of these things that I just am like, can you imagine?
That's crazy.
Being in the 1790s.
Yeah.
Female. Mm-hmm. And just a boss babe.
I know.
Where you're like, oh,
yeah,
I'm essentially going to create war journalism.
Yeah.
Like, well, she didn't create it, but maybe the first female war. Like, she went there to see for herself and to write it.
Right.
Like, that's incredible.
That is incredible. Right. Yeah. Given all the limitations and travel's not easy.
Exactly.
Either.
And really. Part of her becoming friends with everybody and, men, women, whatever, there may have been some sex involved.
Right. Well, earmuffs.
Friends with benefits. Because she really did not believe in marriage. And it was something that she was kind of diehard about, where she was like you were saying, marriage was a trap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, put women in a state of dependence. And then, of course, like if you're thinking about the traditional framework for the kind of relationship that marriage is, well, it's a hierarchical one.
Yep.
It is just as, the family unit is hierarchically structured, right? Where dad is kind of like the king of the household, just like the king is the king of the magistrate. Dad takes, dad's word is the law.
Yep.
And everybody else obliges and pays respects. And it's not, in the best, circumstances, it's
for her, it wasn't for sure. She had a bad dad.
She had a bad dad. But, marriage, just like the family in general, right? These are hierarchically structured relationships, just like a boss is hierarchically, right? In relation to an employee, the boss is on top, right?
Yep.
And so the husbands are on top, right? Husbands are, are to sort of rule over wives. And that's why, right? Like you do find evidence of there being good marriages in this period, because you have, to put it in, I don't know, maybe a little bit of controversial terms, a benevolent dictator, right?
Yep, absolutely.
But nonetheless, don't we want marriage, at least this is what Mary Wollstonecraft is thinking, don't we want marriage to be a relation of equality, a non-hierarchical relationship where each party comes to the table with mutual respect for the other, with mutual, coming to the table with skills and intellect and motivation, right? Like how much better and sweeter would life be, and would society be for everyone?
Because this benefits the man too.
Exactly.
Having an educated wife is also to his benefit. Not only is his household run better, if that is the thing.
She's responsible for the children, for raising the children. Wouldn't you want the person responsible for rearing your child also to be educated, to be able to
pass on these education, and also to maybe you need to reflect on your business. Maybe you need, when you're entertaining people within your business, even to the level of just like craftsmen and things like that.
Yes.
Think about how frequently in our society now, although I have a lot to say about double income households and whatnot, how often it is that the especially in small business, where like there's a male female relationship of bond of like who's administrative, who's the craftsperson, and and I'm not saying that has anything to do with gender, because
totally
it could go either way.
Absolutely.
For who is companionable about that. But this is her talking about that 200 and 300 years ago.
Yeah, right.
No, 200 years ago.
I'll take your word for it because I am not doing mental math like that.
But I'm like 232 years ago.
47 seconds, 48 seconds.
She's talking about this a long time ago. And of course, it takes a long time for society to transition.
Yeah.
So while she's in France trying to write all of these things and she's friends with whoever and she does fall in love and have a baby.
Yeah.
Out of wedlock.
Not with William Godwin.
No.
This is before.
This is Inlay, which is, he was a American guy who did shipping. He was like a shipping guy from the Americas. And she fell in love with him and they had a baby. And she's like, I don't want to be married. Like, who knows what the discussion was. But she did not, she was very public about not believing in marriage. So I believe she probably stood by that in that. Right. But while all this happening, the revolution is happening and it's kind of crazy. And she ends up leaving him not leaving him, but leaving to go, one, to get to better safety because it does become very unsafe within Paris. And part of what she goes to do is help this dude by going, one of his ships disappear that has all this silver on it because he's like running the blockades, which is like questionable ethically about him trying to bring goods into France for the highest bidder. Anyways, it's kind of gross because you're kind of, anyway, she decides to go and do this mission. I think partially to be like, women can do anything that men can do.
Yeah.
She's like with an 11-month-old,
right?
Like traveling all through Scandinavia and writes this beautiful travel log of like her travels in Scandinavia. But then she also unveils this whole other thing about friendship that she writes on a philosophical level, which is the loneliness that exists when you only have surface level friendships, because there's a duration that happens with long-term friendships that can understand and compensate loneliness in a much different way. And she did suffer with depression, like she had depression issues. Famously, her daughter, Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, also had some very depressive, gothy tendencies of dwelling in dark kind of ideas and things like that. And so when she's on this quest, that's kind of a lover's quest, but also an adventure as a woman, she discovers this kind of part of friendship that she hadn't previously been considering when she so publicly was like, women, equality and all these things. And this idea of loneliness had nothing to do with femininity. Right. She did not see it as a female issue, but she did see it as something that only friendship could quell. Now, that friendship could exist between sisters or family members. Right. But the bigger part of that is it's a certain kind of, there's a friendship, right? A certain kind of relationship that you have with people that alleviates this loneliness. Yeah. And when she ends up back in England, like after running all over Scandinavia and stuff, and then she's like, that dude sucks. For a variety of reasons. Baby daddy. To baby number one. He's like, why he's so terrible. Mm-hmm. And she gets back, and her and William Godwin, who have been keeping in touch, and, they're both philosophers and writers, and in this kind of counterculture existence, their friendship all of a sudden culminates into like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Why were we wasted all of this time that we could have been together? Yeah. Right. And this comes from this combination of her being like, oh, men and women can be friends. Yes. First of all.
Yes. Which is already a huge departure from the traditional script.
And then also there's this other side of it, which is there are elements of the, of your internal emotions that only friendship is the salve of. Right. And that's that like loneliness. And so she was able to, they somehow found each other, which is miraculous that they like met at this dinner party. Yeah. And were like.
Kept in touch.
Yeah. Even though they annoyed each other.
Yeah.
You're
bickering at a dinner party.
Constantly with like famous people.
Right.
Like there's
no less
that, although Thomas Paine was not a big talker. So maybe it was boring. Maybe that's, I like everyone's like, he wasn't a big talking. I'm like, sounds like a boring dinner guest. Everyone's excited to meet, but then no one's glad to have met.
Right.
But yeah, so they come together, they become lovers, and they do the coolest thing, which also even now would be considered pretty weird.
Yeah.
Which is that they lived next door to each other. They did not move in together.
Right.
They lived next door to each other. Everyone knew that they were together. But they were like, William Godwin was like, oh, you want your own space and your own household, and cool.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in marriage either.
Yeah.
He thought marriage was really weird.
Yeah.
He thought, he also had all these ideas of societal's expectations around marriage, both from the male and female point. Yeah. Like it's not only is it weird for women to enter this servitude, but also it's weird for men within society to just be like, yeah, that's normal, and no one's worried about it. Yeah. And all the laws around, like, he just thought it was a weird institution. But he also thought it was weird because he's like, how as a society are we like so discreet? We're supposed to be so discreet about sex. And then we have this huge like celebration where we're like, everybody look, we're about to go have sex.
Yeah, exactly.
I've preserved my innocence until this moment that I'm announcing to everyone.
Broadcasting in the most ostentatious ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that it's really funny that was kind of a published opinion of his, that he's like on about it. So anyways, you can see where they're like,
definitely,
they had, even if they were bickering all the time, they had these like concepts of society that were like mutually agreed upon, where they're like, even if we don't agree on every point, we agree that society is like, could be reformed into a better way.
Right.
And so they were neighbors, like they lived next door,
funny.
but also completely in love and lovers, and just for the kind of fault in our stars sort of thing, though. She does get pregnant with Mary Shelley.
Yep.
And once they got pregnant, they called it an experiment in marriage. They referred to them getting married as this experiment in marriage where it was for the baby, right? They, as moral beings with their own individual personhoods, felt fine being independent.
Yeah.
But they realized because of society that they were not giving their child the best opportunities if they were not married.
Right.
They were creating a kind of scar on her to stay apart. So, which I think is cool as intellectual beings to be like, we said this our whole professional career, and now we're willing to like eat our words. Right. But because we love each other and mutually respect each other, we're going to do it, and we're going to come together. So anyways, it's not really to do with the philosophy of bringing them together, but it is, sadly, they had this baby and then she passed away.
Right.
Because of the childbirth.
Complications of childbirth. Another
way that women were subjected.
They were like, we're just going to not wash our hands. If you die, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but we don't know why.
But we just don't know why.
But we're also not washing our hands.
And also keep having, you got to keep having the babies.
Yep.
Even if it means you might die. But I think it's so interesting the way that she sort of like lives according to her principles and commitments in ways that are rejecting or resisting the traditional, roles or expectations for women. But at the same time, she's not so callous that she's going to dig her heels in and say, you know what, I'm so principally against the institution of marriage that even if it would present some benefit to my child's, life, then she's, it was like reasonable person, her and Godwin. And what I find also so interesting is despite the fact that they were both, against the institution of marriage, or at least had really principled ways of thinking about how the institution or frameworks around marriage ought to be reformed, they both found reasons to say, all right, you know what, we're going to do this, and it doesn't take away from our criticisms and critiques, right, of this thing, but we are, we do have this really unique for the time.
Absolutely.
This really unique bond and relationship that is forged from a friendship, which for so many people of this period could not have been said. And it really, I don't know, you might think stood the test of time, despite the fact that they didn't get together initially all those years ago. Like this bond, this intellectual friendship that they had, because, right, they both challenged each other intellectually, respected each other intellectually, and just on a human level.
He thought she was so brilliant.
He did.
He really highly respected her. And obviously she respected him. There's no way she would have gotten involved with someone.
Right.
Because she didn't need to. She didn't have those restrictions on herself.
Right. And so the fact that she was willing to opt into the thing that she had criticized for so long is just evidence to the fact that the bond that they had, the love that they had for each other, was so deep and deeply forged. And it was forged in friendship, importantly, right?
Yep.
It was forged in friendship, not mere lust or mere adoration, but friendship, which requires, as we've been saying all along, right, mutual respect and intellectual recognition of the other. And also, friendship is characteristically non-hierarchical, right? If we look back at all the other folks that we've been thinking about on friendship, right? That seems to be a thread that weaves a lot of how these folks are thinking about
Hold
friendship.
up, Kylie. Confucius says, because I'm older than you.
I must revere.
You must revere.
Nobody can see right now, but I am bowing. I am praising Dani.
So in the Western world, yes,
exactly.
It's not hierarchical in any way.
Yeah. And of course, this jives with her whole thing about like marriage has to be equal. It has to be non-hierarchical if it's to be, thriving and flourishing. And if the partners in marriage are going to independently flourish, which is going to be, right, important ingredients for the relationship as a whole. So if we're bringing it all the way back to thinking about like these rom-coms and this kind of very contemporary idea of like, marry your best friend, right?
Yep.
Of course, there's so much more to be said about that and different threads to pull out of that. But like, it's just to say that what prescient insights she had, right? We don't know if she's the first person to have said this, maybe not, but regardless, all these years ago, she's sort of resisting these very traditional, sort of paths for women and for men, right?
Yep.
She's resisting the kind of traditional script and saying, we can be friends with men. We should be friends with men. You should be friends. Maybe your spouse or the person you marry doesn't have to be your best friend of all time. Like maybe you have independently some best friend, but like you should marry someone. At least this is Mary's advice.
Yeah.
Marry someone with whom you're friends, right? Which entails intellect, virtue, adoration, along with respect and all of these important pillars that come together to make a friendship. Like that's the foundation that should ground a marriage, or at least in the ideal, it's the foundation that would ground a good marriage.
Yeah. And we like to talk about and tie these in with our personal lives.
Yeah.
We both live this on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like I almost have this, like when my husband and I first met, we were not interested in dating each other, but we immediately had a friendship bond that was very clear. Like we wanted to hang out together. We had mutual interests that we wanted to delve into.
Yeah.
But we were also very sarcastic and like sort of awful to each other in the way that only kind of instant best friends can be.
Totally.
Which did not bode well for the very first part of our romantic relationship. But we figured all of that stuff out. But I wanted to make fun of you because I feel like philosophers and people who study professors of philosophy, if you will, somehow only get with each other. What's up with that? Is it William Godwin? Is it Wollstonecraft and William Godwin just being reborn over and over again?
Exactly. It's they've set the precedent. No, it's so funny. I mean, people always, people also ask a lot, right? Because they know philosophers to be the type to argue and to get into these kinds of arguments and quarrels and whatever. Of course, not a heated yelling match, but, philosophical disagreement. And so people...
Discourse,
exactly. That's what makes the world go round. So people always think like, oh gosh, like you're married to another philosopher, like, uh-oh, how does that go well? And I mean, I think maybe not, it might not be for every philosopher to be with a philosopher, but I think for us, I can also say that he is like my best friend, and it's not just a union of romantic love, but it's also like the other kinds of love. There's like so many dimensions to love, and so like it's really I think important to me that we have this friendship that's not just right. It doesn't just kind of collapse into a romantic relationship, or it's not just right. Like, oh, the old ball and chain, but whatever these tropes or whatever it is. So like, I feel lucky to have this kind of friendship bond with my spouse, like,
I got off of this, but the applied philosophy part of it, I think, do you have biases that prevent you from being friends with someone of the opposite sex?
Right.
And are they societal biases?
Right.
Do you have a work wife?
Right.
That, and now I would even say take away gender.
For sure.
Out of this, even though we are talking about a gendered topic because it's Wollstonecraft.
For sure.
She was a feminist, and that's where we bring in these gender differences.
Yeah.
But, do we have these potentially, kind of stagnated friendships that we've put blockages on that could be expanded, but gender has prevented us from expanding those friendships?
Yeah.
Just think about that. And
yeah.
And when you consider, is there an impossibility of crossing those lines without there being other presumptions or whatever? Not from you and not from that person.
Right.
Society. Yeah, presumptions. Yeah. So we want to thank everybody. We want to thank Sam for our music, Tyler for coming and doing our audio stuff for us. Everyone who puts up with us, thank you so much for the listener.
Yeah.
And Kylie, I think you had a wonderful quote.
I have a quote for you. Friendship is a serious affection, the most sublime of all affections, because it is founded on principle and cemented by time.